Welcome, everybody, to this spotlight session that is going on this week on climate change and gender equality, the IAEA's role in Atoms for Climate. This event marks the International Women's Day 2022. We are part of the Vienna-based UN family organizations that are doing spotlight sessions throughout this week. Now, the topic is climate crisis. It has had and will continue to have severe and lasting impacts on our environment and economic and social development of countries everywhere. These impacts, however, they are not really felt equally by all members of the society. Women are increasingly becoming more vulnerable to climate change impacts than men. This is not a competition as to who gets the most damage, but women simply make up the majority of the world's poor, and they happen to be more dependent on the natural resources, which climate change threatens the most. So today we will hear from experts from the IAEA to learn about some of the ways that the work of the agency relates to the topics of climate change and gender equality. So we are putting the two. Where is the nexus? On the nuclear side, the nuclear technologies offer precise tools for countries in monitoring, mitigating, and adapting to climate change. But in today's episode, our focus will be more on the agency's work in adaptation and monitoring. That is simply also in line with the focus of the upcoming UN Climate Change Conference, COP27, that will take place in November in Egypt's Sharm el-Sheikh. My name is Ayhan Evrensel. I'm from the IAEA Department of Nuclear Sciences and Applications, and I'm pleased to introduce you to three colleagues from my department. Jody Miller is an earth scientist working on working on water resources. And then we have Liheng Heng, a soil scientist working on climate smart agriculture. And from our laboratories in Monaco joins Ashley Bantelman, a biologist working on ocean acidification. We will have three short question rounds with our panelists. They will introduce you to the cutting edge science that we use here at the agency. And then we will open up to questions from you. So if any of the viewers have questions for us, please put them in the chat. Now, without further ado, let's hear on how your science, colleagues, relates to the climate change and the climate science. Jody, let's start with you. On water resources, where is the nuclear connection there?
Thank you, Ian. In my part of the Department of Nuclear Applications, we work on water resources, but from an isotope hydrology perspective. So what we do is that we take the isotopes of the water molecule and we use those isotopes to create a fingerprint, which allows us to track the migration of the water molecule, individual water molecules through the water cycle. And so when we understand the intersection between the atmospheric system, the surface water system, the groundwater system, we can use that isotopic or nuclear information to understand how climate change is impacting the connections between those systems. How sustainable are they? How are those interconnections changing the different types of precipitation patterns and how they affect flow through to the groundwater system? Because groundwater is increasingly being used in many countries around the world to support sustainable water resources when surface water supplies dwindle because of climate change.
Thank you. So you're following the footsteps of water.
We are following the footsteps, yes. And so, that's an important baseline that's needed worldwide, because we use that information, we produce that information and we pass that information to other nuclear scientists who use that information in different ways.
Right. I think one of those scientists who use it is next to you, Liheng. So from precipitation, we come now to earth, to soil. Liheng, you're a soil scientist. How does your science relate to climate change?
Thanks, Ayhan, and good afternoon, everyone. Like you said, I'm a soil scientist working on climate smart agriculture, and climate change actually severely affecting food and agriculture through changing rainfall patterns, drought, flooding, and the expansion of plant and pest diseases, so on and so on. So our work together with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, we help to support the safe uses of nuclear techniques. And in our work, we see that agriculture is very much a victim of climate change, and like I mentioned before, but agriculture also contributes some 25% towards the global greenhouse gas emission. So in terms of what Jody was just saying, agriculture actually uses some 70% of the global freshwater use, whether it comes from groundwater, river, or green or blue waters. But yet the water use efficiency in agriculture is less than 50%. Imagine if we can save 10% of this 70% of water use, it can be used in so many other places and in areas. So it is important that we help to monitor the amount of water on land, in soil, so that we can help to improve the water use efficiency, and so that in terms of water saving agriculture and technology packages. So if you want me to elaborate more, I can say, or I can stop here.
Maybe we will have more chances on that, Li Heng. Let's just make a quick round on understanding the science to our viewers. And from land now we move to the ocean. Ashley, please tell us, how does the nuclear isotopic techniques relate to climate change? What do you do there in Monaco?
Thank you. So yes, I'm at the Marine Laboratories here in Monaco, and I am working on ocean acidification. So most of the time when people hear ocean acidification, the first thing that sort of comes to mind is climate change, as the two are very intertwined together by the changing carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere. So as we all know, carbon dioxide is a byproduct of burning of fossil fuels, and the ocean helps to regulate the atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations as it can absorb carbon dioxide. It has absorbed about a third of human released carbon dioxide, but we are creating CO2 faster than the oceans can absorb it. And when it's being absorbed, a process is happening where the seawater is reacting chemically with the carbon dioxide, and it is increasing the acidity of the ocean. So this is known as ocean acidification. So this is a growing concern for the planet that is, as I have mentioned, linked to climate change. It's a very serious threat to ocean health. It has profound negative impacts across the entire oceanic food chain. It has led to the dissolution of shells of calcifying species like clams, oysters. It negatively impacts the coral reefs. So here in the laboratories, I am the lead project officer for the IAEA's Ocean Acidification International Coordination Center. This is a center that has a threefold mandate. We act as a hub to communicate, promote, and facilitate activities on ocean acidification, and they're divided into three categories: science, capacity building, and communication. So just to link this to the nuclear aspect, the science aspect of our work, here in the laboratories, we have scientists who are working to understand and measure the impacts of ocean acidification. And they do this using radioactive tracer techniques like calcium-45 to measure the differences in growth of different organisms when they're exposed to different levels of ocean acidity.
Amazing, thank you. So the ocean acidification is not just an issue for the divers in Sharm el-Sheikh, host to the next COP27, but for all of us. Now, I understand all three of you are using atomic level tracers to follow what moves from where to where and how we can take action on it. But my next question would be, how does your science, these projects, really have impact on women? Lee, could we start with you this time?
Yes, for women and girls, they are often more prone to the impact of climate change, especially in region that is more vulnerable and marginalized. And they seems to bear the brunt of climate change because they are more dependent on natural resources, which climate change are most impacted. So we have seen many cases in our work, especially in Africa, where our work is with smallholder farming, and we see that most of the field work are carried out by women. They carry water from long distance for irrigation, growing of crops, as well as for home consumption. Judy can elaborate later on this. And just here, I want to just mention one case study, which is in Sudan. You see the background of me today, and this is where we are working with refugees in the eastern part of Sudan, where they use drip irrigation. You can see this line. These are drip lines where water is applied directly to the crops. But we do this using nuclear isotopic techniques because the soil there is dispersed saline, and only the neutron probe is suitable under those conditions to help them monitor the scarce water that they have. It's very dry and hot there. And we also train the scientists to determine how efficient is the fertilizer that they apply. But with all this information, they further train the local extension people without the isotopic component. It's just the packages that derive from the isotopic techniques is used to transfer to the farmers, who are mainly women in this case. So our work started with some 360 farmers in 3 villages, and then it get expanded to include another more than 1,200 farmers in 10 more villages, and we were able to attract NGO and local, the Sudan Red Crescent, UNHCR, and other group to come in to help. And later on, this work was further extended to other parts of Sudan in northern Kassala, Red Sea area, with more than 900 more women farmers included. So we see that by helping them, giving them opportunity, we can really empower women and girls to help them get out of poverty and food insecurity.
Thank you, Li Heng. When you said about, young women and girls carrying water, it just, I remembered a story our Deputy Director General Najat Mukhtar has told us once. In a public event, as a 5-year-old girl, she would walk kilometers to fetch water. So years down the line, she heads our department, one of the Deputy Directors General of the IAEA. That's what the empowerment is about. The next, Ashley, I would like to hear the same from you. How does our ocean monitoring or ocean acidification work really benefit the women?
So I've told a bit about the negative impacts of ocean acidification on the oceans, and we all know that having healthy oceans are key to conserving the health and well-being of our planet in general. But they also provide very important sources of livelihood and also nutrition for billions of people around the world, which obviously includes women. So some of the services the oceans provide are, of course, food, cultural practices, and then crucial income from sectors like fisheries, tourism, and aquaculture. Normally, when we think of the fisheries and aquaculture sector, we think it's more of a male-dominated field, but actually when you add in secondary elements like processing and trading, then women make up about 50% of the workforce. So it is a very important part of the livelihoods for women, and this is particularly true in developing countries where women rely on fisheries and aquaculture and thereby the oceans for their livelihoods. And they're often the most vulnerable communities out there. So it brings in this aspect of job security for them, and with increasing levels of ocean acidification, there will be increasing negative impacts on these industries. And then I've also mentioned tourism. This is a very heavy female field. Women make up more than 50% of the people employed in tourism, and obviously the oceans are crucial for the tourism sector. So as climate change increases, as we see increasing levels of ocean acidification, women will be very negatively impacted.
We're talking about multi-sectoral impacts. Thank you, Ashley. Jody, the same for you. On isotope hydrology, following the traces of water droplets, how does it really impact the lives of women?
So I think if you listen to the really important work that Lee and Ashley are doing, these are really important fields of science that we promote here that contribute to improvement of women's lives. But one of the things about climate change is that sometimes it doesn't work. And sometimes climate change is so profound that we need to move humans to some other location. And there are migrations going on when water resources become so constrained that populations have to shift. And sometimes this is naturally occurring, sometimes this is man-made, sometimes it causes wholesale migration, sometimes it causes dislocation of family groups. But in all of these scenarios, women are usually adversely affected. And as soon as you move a population, the first thing that you need to support those people is a water supply. And that's one of the main things or main scientific outcomes of the work that we do, is we contribute also with other UN agencies to find sustainable, secure water supplies. We look at the age of the water supply using the same types of radio traces that Ashley is talking about. We look at how much is available, how much does it recharge, to see whether it can be a secure supply for the type of small-scale farming that Lee is talking about. And we help UN bodies like the UN High Commission for Refugees when they're dealing with refugee camps. Is the water supply going to be sustainable where they're placing that refugee camp? So these are the types of information sources that we provide that disproportionately help women, because women are usually at the forefront of these human migration and human dislocation result of climate change.
Sorry, I muted myself. Very crucial work. Thank you for this. Now, to connect to the International Women's Day, your scientific area, why is it really important to involve more women and girls into your science? What will change when we have more women in your area? Let's start with Ashley this time, please.
Thanks, Ihan. So I'll speak from my perspective as a woman in a technical field. I have seen just from my own experience that I often bring in a different opinion, sometimes a different perspective, a different point of view to my male counterparts. And if we're talking about climate change, which is one of the greatest threats to our planet, I think that it is important that we are bringing in the perspectives of everybody. So we need to make sure that we are reaching gender parity in these crucial fields for climate change, so that we're bringing in those differing opinions, those differing perspectives, so that we can really be able to better tackle the crisis at hand.
Thank you. Jody, what would more women bring to your science?
So I'm not sure that I would quite phrase it like that. What would more women bring to my science? But prior to joining the agency, I spent a lot of time working in higher education, and I see that one of the most important things for young women coming into the sciences is having suitable role models. And I think that that's, as the agency, we have a really important role to play there to show that women, young girls, women can go on in sciences, in the STEM fields, in science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And I think that young girls coming through the school system, the university system, need to see this. They need to see that there are viable career paths for them. And somewhere like a leading agency like the IAEA is really important to promote that gender parity, to encourage more women to come through the system, so that, as Ashley says, we have that balanced viewpoint when we need to come up with solutions to the world's existential problems.
Thank you. Thank you. And Li Heng, why is it so important that more women are involved in your sciences?
Well, women, by nature, we tend to be a little shy, and they often think that science are tough subjects, and so they normally don't come too near to these topics. Especially in soil science, it's even harder to find women, and we see that when women are given the opportunity, when they are helped and explained along the way, when we help them to overcome their hurdles and challenges, just like the Sudan case study, you see that they can be empowered and they can bring the woman perspective way of doing science and doing well in science. So I believe this is important, so that we all have a whole perspective on human being in science and decision making and the expansion of science. So
Thank you. Thank you. Dear participants, viewers, you've seen the chat message from our virtual moderator, Rachel Loper. We will open to your questions in a minute. So please, if you have things either on the science or on the gender aspect to ask, please post them. And let me give you sort of wrap up what the three colleagues were saying. The agency is indeed committed to gender equality and to supporting the ability of individuals, regardless of gender, and equally contributes to the benefit from programs and activities. Director General Rafael Grossi, as part of his commitment, he basically committed to achieving the gender parity within the agency. That means parity, 50% men, 50% women, at the IAEA in professional positions, in P positions by 2025. So we have 3 years. We've come from a very negative number, so to say, but in the last few years, since the goal was set in 2020, 2 years ago, we've had a 7% increase on that, and we're on track to reach the target. Additionally, in case some of our viewers who might not have heard of that, 2 years ago, the agency launched the Marie Sklodowska-Curie Fellowship Program. It basically is designed to help young women to study sciences related to nuclear fields, giving them a stipend, and then even after their master's studies, offering them internships. We already have the first batch of interns at the IAEA currently, as we speak, gaining practical experience. It basically is a nice program. Over 110 female students are given scholarships every year. So there are announcements on the IAEA website. Please follow if you have also, young women who are intending to study sciences to follow that. More info is on our website. So if there are any questions, I would like to open up. We've finished in 27 minutes our round about the science and about the gender aspect. And if you have questions either on the technical aspects of my colleagues or on their views on the gender equality, we're all ears.
And if I might just want to contribute another point. I think it's also worth reiterating that a lot of us here at the agency have to remember that although we are working towards gender parity and there are increasingly more and more female scientists, and you get this sense that things are changing, I think it's important to remember that there's very different situations that exist around the world. And so we have to recognize that while on the one hand, it might be changing in our immediate sphere, it's important to make sure that across the board and all around the world, that this is the same for all women. And that's one of the things that I like about working for the agency is that we, and I'm sure Ashley and Lee will agree, that we work towards gender parity at the agency, but we're also working very strongly towards gender parity with our member states and the counterparts that we work with to support them in their work and encourage them to bring forward up and coming young female scientists to improve, again, as Ashley said, the differences in the way that we approach problems to make sure that that's occurring everywhere, not just at the agency.
Thank you. Yes.
That's a really good point, Jody. And just to piggyback off of that a bit, I will say, one of the things that this Ocean Acidification International Coordination Center that I'm working with does is we do a lot of capacity building and training programs. And we always try to ensure that when we open a training course that we have gender parity and train an equal number of men and women. So that's a really good point.
Thank you. One of our colleagues has put in a very useful note in the chat that it's not just the Marie Curie Fellowship, Marie Skłodowska-Curie Fellowship Program, but also because the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Fellowship Program is destined for master's programs, but we are also supporting PhD studies together with the International Center for Theoretical Physics, jointly with the IAEA. Basically women from developing countries. So, and the upcoming deadline, my colleague warns, is 15th of April. So there's about 6 weeks left. If anybody is interested, get in touch with us or follow the IAEA website. And I understand one of our colleagues, Aran, has a question.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I really want to thank the panelists for excellent presentation. Really, I fully subscribe to the comment that Karen put in the chat. This was super interesting to listen to. And I think you're a perfect example of women playing a leadership role in fighting climate change and doing so through the use of nuclear technology. So really, thank you and congratulations. My question is, you all work in very specialized fields, and we were talking about attracting women to science and so on. And I was wondering if you could maybe say a few words about what personally attracted you to seek a career in science, and in particular in these very specialized fields in which you are working. Thank you very much.
Who wants to go?
Jody, start first.
Do you know, it's interesting. When I was a young girl, I wanted to do a PhD. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I wanted to do a PhD. I wanted to be an academic. And actually, when I went to university, the first year at university, I actually studied anthropology, politics, English literature, and geography. And actually, in the geography subject, it was broken up into different modules. And one of the modules was earth sciences. It was about plate tectonics and about, the different theories about how the earth formed and shrinking earth and how the plates moved around. And I was completely and utterly hooked. And I switched at the end of my first year and I entered into a science degree. And I just, I liked understanding the chemical system of how these processes occurred. And I liked the way in which the isotopes could help you to understand the connections between the processes. And that's how I got into it. Yeah, I didn't actually start off intending to be a scientist. I moved into it. Yeah.
Still good to have you. Li Heng, do you want to tell what attracted you?
Yes, I always like numbers rather than words. So from small, I wanted to do science, especially mathematics and physics. And in fact, I want to study astronomy. But my family say, who will employ you when you finish your study? And so, so my undergraduate was in mathematics and physics. And actually, I was also thinking of doing computer science, but those days you hold a bunch of this card that you have to read into the computer and to get your computer program. And somebody came and banged on me, and the whole stack of cards spread all over. I said, no more. And so, but and then I had to do 2 industrial projects. One is in the Agriculture Research Institute, where I got interested in micrometeorology. And that's how it brought me slowly into agriculture, applying science and physics. And that's where I am now.
As sad as it may be at that time, that incident brought you to us. So, Ashley, what attracted you to science?
So it sounds like the three of us kind of have this whole thing from childhood in common. From a very young age, I was interested in the natural world around me, from bringing in all sorts of insects and snakes to my home and never allowing my parents to, kill spiders or anything like that. I was just always interested in the environment. And so I decided to study biology. And during my undergraduate degree, I worked in a freshwater ecology laboratory. And so a natural step from lakes, get a little bit bigger and you're at the ocean. So that was kind of my progression.
Thank you. I think everybody. Go ahead.
Sorry,
Please.
I'm sorry. Can I, there's a question in here. Why do you think women involvement in STEM can benefit climate change besides providing different perspectives? So you're probably going to ask that. But it's just interesting hearing the different backgrounds of Ashley, Lee, and myself. We all none of us had linear pathways into the science that we're currently in. And I think, from my perspective, I think that that's one of the real skills of a scientist, is the ability to think laterally and to problem solve, not just within our sphere, but also around our sphere in other sciences. I think that's one of the real advantages of going into science. Maybe that's not necessarily just nuclear sciences, but I think that's a big advantage of being a scientist, is being able to solve problems, whether they be world water resources or food in the Sahel or getting my kids to do their homework. I think problem solving is a really important skill that you develop as a scientist.
True.
Yes, totally correct.
That question from the colleague, I'm not a panelist, but if I may maybe make a comment and hear from you if I'm correct, at least, other than bringing a different angle, what could women bring to climate science? I think it's just the sheer variety of opinions and understanding will help us in any science. If we just say the blue-eyed people and people from that continent and people from that skin are less represented, we're just reducing the pool, the basket of people who might have absolute ideas to advance the science. Would that make sense for you? Is that applicable?
Yeah, I think Ashley's point that she was making earlier about when you have men and women and their problem solving comes from perhaps different perspectives, the way that they approach a problem. I think that equally applies to women from different cultural groups, from different geographical regions. And so it's not just about having a representation of women, it's also having representation of women from different regions, from different cultural, ethnic groups, because these groups also approach problems in different ways and have different perspectives on how things should work. And having all of that in that melting pot, mixing pot of how you get to the solution, I think is really critically important. And again, that's something that the agency is really good at promoting.
That I agree with Jody, and in my work we work with different regional networks who deal with ocean acidification, and it's really important because, you know, the ocean, aside from some of the things that I mentioned, it's also, people often have very strong cultural attachments to the ocean, and they will bring from their different perspectives things that we, you know, you might never have thought about. And I think it's just important in tackling these problems that we really bring in everybody from different backgrounds.
Yeah.
Yes, it's correct. In our work in Africa, Asia Pacific, and Latin America, you learn new things from them besides training and transferring knowledge and technology and they bring very enriching experience that we can all learn from. So it's so important to have their perspective.
True. Thank you. We have two questions. I would like to bundle them because they're really excellent. First of all is how do we continue to inspire young women to go into sciences and STEM? And the other one is, okay, a young woman wants to go into STEM but has culturally or otherwise barriers. How could they overcome those barriers and the stereotypes? How could we help? Other than I mentioned a few of the support programs that we have, but we cannot really run the whole, meet the whole demand, so to say, at the IAEA here.
I think one of the things that we're doing that helps this is actually what we're doing right now, and that's improving the visibility of female scientists. I mean, Lee, you made us a comment at the start that you were quiet and shy, and I think a lot of women scientists, even when they become very successful women scientists, are perhaps not so good at promoting themselves. And these types of platforms, these types of webinars and discussion forums, I think serve a really important role in promoting that and seeing that women have good ideas, that they have similar experiences to a lot of women who are thinking of going on, that, you know, maybe there is somebody who's studying anthropology somewhere listening to this at the moment thinking, oh, maybe I could change as well, or like similar to Ashley's experience and Lee's experience. So I think visibility of female scientists is something that's really important to contribute to that.
Speaking of visibility, we will also make the recording of this available, and then hopefully we will get more and more viewers who couldn't join us now. Ashley, Li Heng, would you like to add something?
Yeah, so the specific question about you know, very specific advice to women who maybe have cultural barriers, I think it's always useful to try to find a role model. So if a young woman is really interested in a field in biology, but she has no idea how to do it, if she is able to potentially reach out to, you know, local universities that are nearby, or local organizations, and find somebody, a woman preferably, who could serve as a role model and guide her and provide advice for, look, I know it's not easy, but this is how I was able to get here, and here are some steps you can take.
Thank you. Li Heng?
Yes, I agree. I feel that if they are from young. There are people guiding them. It can be women or even men, can be your own family. And maybe it start with when you face your academic problem, somebody is there to help you overcome your problem. Then there slowly you move on, and then you discover that they are such wonderful things you can study, you can work on. And so and this is my own experience that, we are not always there at the top all the time, but you always meet people who come along to help you, guide you, and be your role model as a teacher. That bit by bit is how we progress and get to where we are.
As the only male representative here in this chat today, I can also say we have a responsibility as well, not just sheer promotion of women, but rather holding hands of the younger ones to bring them up the ladder, mentoring. The experience that from the old times, managers who are also older than me, who have come from a more male-dominated time, male-dominated area, they should also be able to transfer the experience they have to the coming generation, male and female, both.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
We promised for 45 minutes today. I will wait for 30 seconds more if there is any urgent question that one viewer would want to pose.
I could maybe just make one final comment from my side, and I'm
Please.
quite sure that I speak from Ashley, for Ashley and Lee as well, that if anybody listening wants to reach out to us directly, we are all more than happy to speak to anyone personally. If they were, we're happy to be mentors to anybody. We're also happy to offer any career advice. So anybody listening is more than happy to reach out to any of us. I'm sure Ashley and Lee will agree. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you. Rachel will put probably a final slide for colleagues who would like to reach us. The website obviously has all the contact details. You can follow us through IAEA.org, the main Twitter account, and other social media outlets. Our department, this Department of Nuclear Sciences and Applications, is only on Twitter, IAEA. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for all, first of all, speakers, but thank you for the viewers who have dedicated their 45 minutes in those difficult days to join. More sessions are taking place this week. There is still one tomorrow and one on Friday on the climate change and gender equality that are coming from the UN-based, Vienna-based UN family organizations here. Don't miss our event next Tuesday on the precise International Women's Day on the 8th of July. Director General Grossi will hold a discussion basically with guests from across the world. Again, the topic is women and climate action and the role of nuclear. And on the social media outlets or on the IAEA.org, you can also find more information on that. Thank you, our panelists. Thank you, our viewers. Looking forward to see you all. As a father of girls, I'm inspired, and I will take your message across to my daughters.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
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 Thank you.